Chapter 34. It took some work, but Nikolai was able to do as they had planned. Digging a water hole at the spring was quite easy. Planning when they would go through with the baptism was a bit trickier. On a Friday night, after the men in camp had all gone to sleep, Nikolai and Petya snuck out behind the barracks and circled around to the opposite side of camp. Once on the road, they began the long walk to the spring. It was a risk. No doubt prairie wolves were watching their every move, but the baptism went off without a hitch. Fortunately for them, the evening was warmer than most that time of year. Both men stood in the water hole at the spring, savoring the joy of the sacred experience. Afterwards, they walked the distance to the camp, singing a hymn Nikolai had taught Petya, and shivering in the dampness of the cool evening. And then summer was gone, and fall seemed to pass them by completely. Before they knew it, snow flurries began to fall. The reindeer started to migrate, and snow geese flew southward through the skies. By October, winter had settled in. Nikolai was glad for the long underwear the warden supplied him with. In spite of their past, he began to feel a warm spot in his heart now for the warden. To Nikolai, it seemed the warden was trying to say in some simple way that he felt sorry for all the trouble he had given him. The days were short, but that didn't change the number of barrels needed each week. In order to bring in the required quota, Nikolai and Maxim found themselves working in the dark several hours before dawn each morning, and then 3 or 4 hours again after sunset. The ice was forming thick in the spring now, and Nikolai had to use an axe to cut through it. Of course, this took time and made the trips longer, but Nikolai had other things to worry about. In the cold, dark hours of the winter, Nikolai knew he needed to be watchful of the wolves. Food was scarce now on the tundra, so a man and an ox might prove tempting to their hungry stomachs. But God was merciful, and although Nikolai and Maxim had a few scares, they managed to stay alive and well. The cold, hard winter passed somehow, and then spring gave way to summer. By now, Nikolai had accepted the fact that he might be in this prison camp for a long time, a very long time. When he was tempted to wonder why God needed him in this remote tundra outpost, he remembered Petya's decision for Jesus, and he contemplated the salvation of the other 300 men who were imprisoned at the camp. More than anything, he wanted them to know God as he did. Eventually, he started Bible studies with those who were interested, and before long there was a small band that met regularly. For 7 more years, Nikolai spent his days at the remote prison camp on the steppes of Siberia. For 7 years, he worked with Maxim to haul water from the spring. For all those years, he remained a constant witness to the power of God in the life of a dedicated Christian. To the men in the camp, the life and work of Nikolai and Maxim became a living testimony. Visitors who came to the camp witnessed the phenomenon themselves. Those who left the prison told of a man and an ox that ran all day every Friday so they could rest all day Saturday. And then one day, the army officer who had freed Nikolai from the crate came back to the prison camp. When he saw Nikolai and Maxim hauling water, he remembered the incident from 8 years before. But now he was told a quite different story. When he heard about Maxim's strange habit of running all day Friday to bring 2 days' supply of water in one, he was amazed. With great interest, he asked Nikolai about the operation, and Nikolai shared the whole incredible tale. He told how desperate he had been those first few weeks trying to get Maxim to haul enough water fast enough to earn a Sabbath day rest. And of course he told how good God had been to him. He explained how the ordeal had tested his faith in God, and how he had almost given up. The miracle of Maxim's marathon run that first Friday stirred the colonel's heart. In the repeat performance the following Friday was even more surprising to him. The colonel could see that Nikolai was a good man. He could see clearly now that the preacher had not been guilty of insubordination. In fact, the testimony of his life was proof that he had been willing all along to do whatever was asked of him. Most importantly, the colonel saw that Nikolai had been faithful to his God. Without a doubt, he had been willing to do whatever his God had asked of him. The colonel then shocked Nikolai by taking him to the warden's office to announce that he was going to sign his release forms. He was free to go home on the train to be with his family once again. You have shown us all what a man of character can do if he's motivated, the colonel said proudly, and you have shown what devotion can do for a man who loves his God. The colonel chuckled, and then added, I guess none of us have ever seen an animal as crazy as your ox. If you and your God can get a stubborn ox to run like that, you could probably do just about anything. With tears in his eyes, Nikolai thanked the colonel for his kindness, and then he took his few personal belongings, followed the colonel and his horse back to the train, and began the long journey back to Kiev. Nikolai returned to the life of a pastor and continued to witness for God during the good times as he had during the bad. His church members rejoiced with him that God had brought him home from his long ordeal, and they thanked Jesus for his faithfulness under fire. Today, like every other Seventh-day Adventist Christian in the former Soviet Union, Nikolai Panchuk waits for Jesus to come again. One day, soon he will see Jesus coming in the clouds of heaven and hear the words, Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful to me in small things and in big. You have suffered for my sake. Come and enter into the joy of your Lord.